What is up? Welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Good Saturday night. I have a jam-packed episode for you guys tonight. I'm going to be going over a Bleacher Report win-loss predictions for the Eastern Conference. We'll be going over the top 10 teams in the East and seeing where the Pistons stack up. We'll also be getting into offseason grades that they did give the Detroit Pistons and their explanation for why they gave the Pistons the grade that they did give them. I'll be giving just my honest opinions after reading a short little paragraph from them. We did get some contract details later today on Javonte Green. If you guys haven't been paying attention, the Pistons did sign a 14th player on the roster. We'll be going over the contract details with Javonte Green and what it does mean for the Detroit Pistons. And then we're going to end the podcast with something fun. Some Killian Hayes news actually came out this week, and it's taken everything in me not to say something, but you know what? Screw it. Why not end the podcast off with a bang, right? It's going to be a fun show, you guys. So let's get into these Eastern Conference win-loss predictions from Bleacher Report. So I'm going to put this graphic on the screen. So if you are watching live on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. If you're an audio listener, don't worry. I'll be reading and going over the win-loss record for these teams in the Eastern Conference. So let's start with the number one seed. They have the Cleveland Cavaliers. No surprise there. I think a lot of people assume that the Cavs are going to be coming out of the East. And the record that they did give them was 57-25. I think they could easily, be around there, even more. I think they could probably win over 60-plus games, especially with Indiana and Boston not really being the same team as they were last year, and that has to do with injuries. But 57-25, they have the Cavs as the number one seed. The number two seed, they have the New York Knicks with the record of 51-31, kind of similar of what they had last season. Could see them, kind of floating around there, or maybe more, maybe 54, 55 wins with the New York Knicks, adding guys like Jordan Clarkson and others. I think they will still be a top dog in the East if you do ask me. They basically have the same core coming back. They really haven't made any changes outside of their coach and Mike Brown, which I don't really think there's a drop-off between him and Tom Thibodeau, in my personal opinion. Both defensive-minded coaches. So I'm still pretty high on the Knicks, just being unbiased here for a minute. The Orlando Magic, number 3, the third seed in the East, with the prediction of 49-33. I think we've seen a lot of people in the media very high on Orlando. And I can understand it. When they're healthy, they're one of the best teams in basketball. Adding Desmond Bane, I think, is going to open up a lot for them. Could definitely see them being a top 3, top 4 team in the Eastern Conference when they're fully healthy. Last year, finishing 41-41, they just had injuries all up and down their starting lineup, and they still scratch and clawed their way to a play-in tournament game against the Boston Celtics. So Orlando is a dangerous team if they can just stay healthy. Number 4, Atlanta Hawks. Kind of surprising. 47-35. Ahead of the Detroit Pistons, by the way. Now, Atlanta, I thought, had a very good offseason. Getting Kristaps Porzingis, signing Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Here's my thing with Atlanta, you guys. I'm not as high on them as some people in the media are, or even some Pistons fans for that matter. Atlanta really has to prove it to me. They have to make me eat my words. I don't think Atlanta is going to finish top 4 in the East this year. I just don't see it that way. I could see them having injuries. I know Jalen Johnson's coming back. They have Trae Young still. Like, Dyson Daniels is great. They have a lot of good pieces. They just have to prove it to me. I don't really see them being a top 4 seed in the East. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's a little bias leaking out as I'm doing this. So they have the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks finishing with the same record of 45-37. I'll do the Pistons first. I honestly think that the Pistons could easily win 50 games this year. They're under over from Vegas, 45 and a half. I think they could easily snap that. We got the schedule release. I think their schedule isn't as tough as it was last year. They don't have as many back to backs. Um, Especially the first month or so in the season, there's not really a lot of heavy hitters, in my personal opinion. I think they could be in each and every game that they're playing. So I could see the Pistons being a top four seed if they're fully healthy this year and the players on this team keep taking steps in development. And we're going to have a Sar Thompson right off the gate. So I don't really see the Pistons um, being below Atlanta. I just don't. I'm just not high in Atlanta. You guys probably know that by now if you listen to the podcast. Milwaukee 45 and 37. Milwaukee still has Giannis, so you always have to count them in. As of now, as we're recording this podcast, I mean, there's been so much rumors and talk around Giannis. Is he happy? Is he not? Why did they make this move for Miles Turner? Why did they get rid of Damian Lillard and kind of cut him? There's been just so much chatter in Milwaukee. I could still see them being a 40, 45 win team easily, maybe even a 50 win team. I don't know. Just kind of depends how crazy Giannis does go. Miles Turner, I think, is definitely a plug and play player, just like Brook Lopez. But he's a lot younger. He's not, 35, almost 40. So I think Milwaukee will have a pretty good season as well. I think them being in the Central Division with the Pistons, I mean, in the event that they were both tied, tiebreakers usually go to the team that won the season series in the division. Um, you rarely ever see ties, um, especially in your own division. But in the event that there is a tie, tiebreaker goes to the team that wins the season series. So if let's say Pistons and the Bucks play 4 times a year, and the Pistons win 3 out of the 4, they would get the higher seeding. Or let's say they tie, then it goes by whoever has the better overall record in terms of seeding. But I doubt the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks finish with the same record. I'm going to go down to the Miami Heat, 42 and 40. Milwaukee, Miami, you never can really count out. You just can't with their Spoelstra. They still have Bam, got Andrew Wiggins, Khalil Ware, who I'm still very, very high on. They have some pieces. I just kind of see them more as a play-in team. I'm not too high on Miami. Could they make a big trade? Could they go for another big player? I mean, never count out Pat Riley, but it's tough, man. It's tough. I mean, Tyler Hero had his best year of his career, but I mean, are they really expecting that? Again, I'm not entirely sure. I think a lot is riding on Bam and Tyler Hero to kind of carry this team to the playoffs. They have to kind of just evaluate them as well and see if they can kind of keep pace in a weakened Eastern Conference this year. The Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers, again, with these ties, 38 and 44. I would probably bet money that Boston finishes with a better record than the Philadelphia 76ers, even with Jason Tatum being out. I think the addition of Anthony Simons is really going to help them. I think this is a great year for Jason, or not Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, to prove that it's not he's not the number 2 option. He could definitely be a number 1 option on this team. I think a lot of spotlight is going to be on him. They signed Chris Boucher, who's probably going to be their starting center. You still have Derek White. Joe Mazzulla is a hell of a coach. I'd be really surprised if Boston finishes with a record under 500. I really would, you guys, even with Jason Tatum being injured. I just think the way their system is, they're still going to win basketball games. Now, they're going to win like 60? No. But I could see them being around the 40 to 44 mark personally, maybe even more. Who knows? Maybe they can get high. But I'd find it hard to believe that Miami finishes with a better record than the Boston Celtics. But that's just me. I'm not really high on Miami. You guys may be a little bit higher on Miami than I am. Philly's just health. Like, I think their own under over is somewhere in the 40s, which I think is really high. Um, Kind of given the context of their roster, Joel Embiid and Paul George, like how healthy are they actually going to be? I think that is the one question that a lot of people have. Paul George will be getting, reevaluated like around training camp. How healthy is Joel Embiid? I know ESPN had a, little, um, I guess, a segment on NBA Today about him recently, and it doesn't really give us any context or his situation of like how close is he being to 100%. So with the Sixers, it's his health. Like I could see the Sixers having another bad year. I personally could. Um, I like their young core. I like Jared McCain coming back. I like Tyrese Maxey, BJ Edgecombe. Like they have a lot of great guard play. It's just if they're going to be a playoff team, Joel Embiid has to at least play 50 plus games. And I don't really know if that's going to be the case this year. I really don't. And the final team they had was the Indiana Pacers, finishing with a record of 36-46. Now, I get Tyrese Halliburton isn't going to be active this year. Rick Carlisle, much like Joe Mazzulla, really good coach. You're going to see increased roles from Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nebhard. They still have Pascal Siakam. They still have a very deep bench with TJ McConnell and others, Obi Toppin. I can't see them finishing 10 games under 500. I think they could possibly win 40 games too. I really do, you guys. Like, I don't really see a situation or a scenario where Indiana finishes that low in the conference, like the last team to fight for a play-in tournament. I just can't see it. Maybe I'm crazy. Like I'm a little bit higher on Boston and Indiana this year than I am a team like Atlanta. Like I just don't buy Atlanta. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. Like it's not passing the smell test. If you guys know what I mean. Like I think Detroit could, finish as high as the 4 seed. I think they could flirt with 50 wins. I think they have the talent to. I think, Cade showed us that, he can put a team on his back. You're getting Jaden Ivey back. Star Thompson doesn't have any restrictions. Like, I think this is going to be a really, really fun year, and I can't wait, you guys. We're only like August 16th as we're recording this podcast, and, there's no basketball until October. But I know it's going to come here before we know it. I do want to transition over to another Bleacher Report segment, and this is offseason grades. So they gave the Detroit Pistons a C. Now, C is an average grade to me. I don't know about you. Some of my friends, if they got a D, they were happy because that means they passed. Had a lot of kids I went to high school with not even make it past freshman year or sophomore year. But this is their explanation for the Detroit Pistons and the C grade they gave them. They said it's going to be interesting to see what transpires in an alternate universe where Malik Beasley's Detroit most important internal free agent wasn't connected to a federal gambling investigation right before free agency opened, because the last minute pivot essentially forced the front office to craft a backup plan on the fly. Detroit's decision makers did a decent job of scrambling to second options. The Pistons filled the shooting void left by Beasley by bringing in Duncan Robinson. They also added Karis LeVert to give them more scoring punch and creation off the bench. Still losing Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, and Tim Hardaway Jr. while adding Robinson and LeVert feels like a half step backwards unless rookie second rounder Chaz Lanier is ready to see significant minutes right away. Detroit probably made the best of a tough situation, but it still would have been nice to see a bigger push in hopes of building off the momentum created by last season's playoff breakthrough. So honestly, I'm not even like too mad at their explanation. I think a lot of you guys have kind of had the same opinions this summer. Like you wanted to know, like, are they going to make a push this year to kind of feed off of the great season that they had? Winning 40 plus games, tripling your win total. Like, the East kind of seems like, quote unquote, wide open, as a lot of you guys have mentioned to me. And I tend to agree with you. No Tyrese Halliburton this year, no Jason Tatum. There were teams in the East that were going for it. Like, Orlando put a lot of chips on the table for Desmond Bane, trying to be a Eastern Conference contender, trying to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But the Beasley stuff was hard because, if he never really got investigated, the Pistons reportedly offered him that full mid-level exception over 3 years, like $15 million a year. That was the plan. Like, would they have traded Simone Fontecchio if that didn't happen? You probably don't have Duncan Robinson. Who knows if you go out and try to sign a Caris LeVert? Probably not. But you know what? They did. They signed Duncan Robinson. They went out and got Caris LeVert. They re-signed Paul Reed. They got Javonte Green. This offseason, to me, it's the word I'm looking for. Wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. It was just kind of in the middle. Like, I was like, okay, it was an okay offseason to me. Like, when I saw any of these signings, I wasn't like, okay. Like, I wasn't like pissed. I think Duncan Robinson can play a similar role to Malik Beasley. Is he going to hit 300 threes? I don't know. I really don't know. He's hit over 200 plus in his career with the Miami Heat from a few seasons ago. Could he hit over 200 3-pointers? I think it's possible. I wouldn't rule it out. Is Caris LeVert a different type of player than Tim Hardaway Jr.? Absolutely. He's more of a creator. I think he's the perfect type of player you want to pair next to Jaden Ivey. Because when those two are out there in the second unit together, Jaden Ivey can kind of play more of his natural position where, he's coming off screens and just getting to the cup, getting to the basket. I think Caris LeVert can actually really help Jaden Ivey when he's out there with the second unit. I think he's actually going to be more important than we realize this season. Not only because he's a different type of player than Tim Hardaway Jr., he's just more versatile. He's a better defender. Thing with him is, like, just need him to have a healthy season. Like, that's it. Like, if he has a healthy season, I think it's a clear upgrade over Tim Hardaway. I do. I think, as a playmaker, he's better. As a defender, he's better. But it's just the thing of, like, are you going to get the same kind of production from 3 as you got with THJ? Not really entirely sure. The Paul Reed signing, I wasn't too mad at it. He's a good, third string center. Seemed like a really good locker room and a culture guy as well. Always saw him, clapping and cheering on his teammates, with the two-way guys, the G League guys, with the end of the bench guys. He just seems like a really cool dude. And I thought, for what it was worth in the playoffs, he did his best out there. We were severely undersized with Mitchell Robinson against the Knicks and Cat. He did his best. I mean, what are you going to really ask out of a third string center, right? The Javonte Green signing, I don't really know what to make of it. We're going to get into his contract details next, but he's a defender. That's really it. You're not really signing him for his offense. You signed him for his defense, and I think he can definitely help out the Pistons, and he could help out Asar Thompson and Ron Holland in practice, because this guy is known as a defender. And I always say, iron sharpens iron, you guys. I think going into practice every day, he'll make them better. He definitely will. But I'm not really too mad at this grade by Bleacher Report. C to me is an average grade. I don't think it was an A-plus offseason. I don't think anyone would come up here and say it was an A-plus offseason. I don't think it was a B offseason. I think C is at least fair. I'd go C-plus maybe, but this is my personal opinion. Do want to kind of transition over to the Javonte Green contract details. So we got a tweet earlier today from my guy, Michael Scotto from hoopsite.com. And it says, update. The Detroit Pistons sign Javonte Green to a 1-year, partially guaranteed deal, sources told hoopsite. Green receives $925,000 guaranteed from the Pistons. He averaged 5.3 points on 51% shooting in 6 NBA seasons with the Chicago Bulls, Boston Celtics, New Orleans Pelicans, and Cleveland Cavaliers. So this is a partially guaranteed contract from Trajan Langdon and the Detroit Pistons. I think a lot of us were under the assumption maybe it could have been a veteran's minimum. That is not the case. It's partially guaranteed. Now, usually how partially guaranteed contracts work is you have to release or waive them by a certain date before that contract does become, fully guaranteed. We saw this with Paul Reed this year, where the Detroit Pistons liked Paul Reed, but his contract was going to become, fully guaranteed. They waived him, reconstructed his contract to a minimum, and he was back on the team. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen to Javonte Green. There's a good chance that this guy is a body in training camp, in preseason, and he could be waived before the season even starts. Definitely could. Then you would have 2 more roster spots open, kind of depending on what the Pistons do with their final roster spot. As of right now, they're at 14 active players. They already signed all their two-way guys, so there is 1 roster spot open. There's been reports that they may or may not leave that last roster spot open for Malik Beasley. That was reported by Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. I don't know how true that actually is. We haven't really got any kind of indication if that's true or false, but they haven't signed anybody, so maybe there is some truth to that. Kind of circling back to Javonte Green, he definitely could be cut before the season even starts, you guys. We saw this last year with Lamar Stevens. He had a partially guaranteed deal, and then the Pistons cut him. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what his path is for the Pistons. If it's just preseason training camp, that's okay. And I wouldn't be as mad at it. But, if he's on the roster a little bit longer than we expect, Pistons will probably just waive him so they don't have to pay him his fully guaranteed money. Now, I did mention at the top of the podcast that we're going to end this show with a bang. Oh, man. You guys, I just want to say this before we get into the Killian Hayes stuff. You guys can go watch old podcasts. If you've been subscribed to this YouTube channel for a long time, you probably remember seeing me on a show called DSA, Above the Rim. It was with Detroit Drew, 313 J-Mo, and Bravo. And during the 2020 draft, a lot of us were high on Killian Hayes. We were wrong. I'll admit I was wrong. Tyrese Halliburton should have been the pick. But when I see a tweet like this, you guys, it took everything in me. I was like, man, I probably shouldn't talk about it. Pistons fans probably don't care. But when I saw this, I was like, I have to talk about it. This is funny. Okay. So Killian Hayes has been rejecting overseas offers to focus on making his return to the NBA. Okay. This was reported by Euro Hoops Net. Listen, I'm not going to come up here and say that Killian Hayes, shouldn't want to still play in the NBA. I think he should. I think that, some of these end of the bench players make great money and they don't play. They're just, bench mobbing. They're having a good time. But seeing him as a Pistons fan, watching him over the years, he does have NBA skill sets. He's a good defender. He's a good passer. But what really just altered my mind of thinking with him is when I had Corey Woods up here with me last year when the Detroit Pistons decided to move on from Killian Hayes. He was in the media room when Troy Weaver was still the GM, and Troy told him, I asked him to work on his shooting. He never did it. To me, that was just like, an alarm in my head saying, if this guy isn't actually focused on working on an area of his game that is a weakness, that's a huge red flag. And then when he did get released, he was on a G League team last year. He was with the Long Island Nets, and he was putting some great games together in the G League. He gets called up late in March. The Brooklyn Nets had nothing to play for. I think we all know that. Like, Brooklyn was tanking. They were trying to get a good pick. Obviously, they had 4 first, and they drafted a lot of playmakers. So the odds of Brooklyn looking at Killian Hayes are probably pretty damn slim. And they're probably going to be one of the worst teams in basketball again this year. They are. My mind just went to Michael Porter Jr. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but man, like, he has been on so many podcasts lately. You guys get bored. Just look up Michael Porter Jr. interviews. They have been just all-timers. Circling back to Killian Hayes. I get you want to be in the NBA, but Brooklyn's probably not calling you back. Washington, who's probably going to be worse than Brooklyn, assuming, their vets just want out. Like, Chris Middleton's like, get me out of here. CJ McCollum, who knows how many games he's going to want to play. Like, trade me at the deadline, get me out of here. They have an abundance of guards that they're probably going to want to develop. They took a guard really high in this year's draft. I doubt Washington's going to be calling Killian's line either. Look at out west in Utah. They have a bunch of guards too. Like, I get Killian wants to come back in the NBA. He wants to try to be an NBA player again. But I think a big reason why he's not an NBA roster right now is he just never worked on his jump shot. He never worked on his shooting. We see the workout videos every summer, in a standstill gym. I think a lot of us can make open jumpers. It kind of felt like the Andre Drummond videos, right? I wish him well, but I think if he was smart, he would just take the overseas offers. There's no shame playing overseas. We see a lot of former NBA players play over in Europe, and they have good, long careers over there. I mean, that's where he started. He played in Germany. He played it on Team Ulm. Like, it just didn't work out in the NBA because he never really focused on developing a jump shot. And that's why he's not on an NBA roster. Like, I saw this. I'm like, man, like, you got to just kind of reflect and say, like, why it didn't work with the Detroit Pistons? I had a lot of opportunities. I had a lot of shots. You're not on an NBA roster right now because you never worked on your jump shot. But, hey, I'll just leave it at that, man. Like, wish him well. I don't really know if an NBA team is going to give him an actual NBA roster spot. He might get a camp invite somewhere. Maybe a G League team is looking to have him. But I think his pathway to getting real NBA minutes, actually playing on an NBA roster, not late in March, pretty slim to none. And it was just like, I went to a game this year in March, and the Pistons were playing the Nets, and I'll end it with this. So, Pistons were just kicking the Nets' ass. Nets come back, but they ended up, closing out the game. I get home from LCA, and maybe 2 hours later, you get that Shams tweet. The Brooklyn Nets have waived Killian Hayes. Like, right after he played his former team. That sucks for him. Wishing him well, man. But I just can't see him making an NBA roster, even with being a good defender and a passer. Maybe he'll get a training camp invite. But I did want to end the podcast on, something funny. We watched Killian Hayes here for years. He was a number 7 overall pick in 2020. Just didn't work out. He didn't work on his jump shot. But I will see you guys on Monday. We're taking tomorrow off. Monday should be a really fun podcast. We have a bunch of topics we're going to be going over. It'll be more of a longer form podcast, so maybe an hour, hour and a half, maybe two, who knows. But appreciate each and every one of you guys watching live on YouTube right now. If you're an audio listener, we appreciate you guys too. If you could, on the way out, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed on YouTube. Trying to get to 30,000 subscribers on here. We're getting closer and closer each and every day. And I honestly, genuinely appreciate the support from you guys. If you're an audio listener and you'd like these podcasts throughout the week, definitely leave us a 5-star review if you're feeling generous. If not, don't feel any pressure. But we'll see you guys on Monday. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.